there, and welcome to the Seven Figure Entrepreneur Podcast, where we empower authors with tools, resources, and inspiration to build prosperous book brands. I am your host, Octoria Robinson, and today we will be interviewing Dr. Vernetta Mosley. OMG, guys, Dr. Vernetta is here with us. Listen, y'all know I'm always bragging on people. I've got to give Dr. Vernetta Mosley a shout out. Not only is she a brilliant mind in the space of writing and so forth, but she's also a coach that works really intimately with a lot of our authors. So I'm not speaking about her from a perspective of admiring her from a distance. I've seen her work in my own writing career as well as authors that we assist with Dream That Big Publishing. How are you, lady?
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for having me. And I'm excited to be a part of your podcast.
Yay! Okay, guys, let me dive right in because I want to give her as much time as possible to talk about a really important topic. Wait for it. Here it goes. Crafting content that sells. And we're going to hone in on how to master clarity in writing. All right, Dr. V, if that's okay, I'll call you Dr. V. Again, I know I've introduced her as Dr. Vernetta, but I'll be referring to you as Dr. V. Tell us a little bit about your journey and how you became an author.
Sure. Well, from a young age, I was kind of like that kid that was a bookworm, always reading books. And so my very first, formal entree into authorship beyond just doing class assignments was entering a writing contest, an essay writing contest. And I won first prize, and that was in elementary school. And so I'll never forget, it was the Daughters of the American Revolution. And I was writing an essay contest, and I won the contest. So that was kind of my first entree. From there, when people, then I went on to college, majored. I always loved English and writing, but I needed a profession. And so I was thinking, well, I can't get a career being a writer back, I'm not going to date myself, but, coming out of my circumstances where I'm a first generation college student, it was all about practicality. What's going to make some money? And so I wasn't an English major. I was an English minor, and I was a business major because I wanted to make money. But I never liked math. And so I had to take economics, and that deterred me. So I switched to journalism. Like, I can be a journalist. I get into that discipline, and I don't like that style of writing. I like the feature writing and the magazine writing, not this is what happened in news today, and this is what happened in sports today. Mm-hmm. And so from there, I ended up graduating with the degree, not wanting to be a journalist. So here I was with the degree and still not being able to pursue what I really enjoyed. And so I finally decided, if I'm going to go get educated, I'm going to educate myself on what I like to do. And so I went on to get a master's in English and had a mentor there who persuaded me and convinced me, said, just go all the way, and got a Ph.D. in English. And so from there, it was just being able to perfect the interest, get the skill set that I needed to do certain things. And so, and really my first book was about meeting the need of specifically academic authors or writers who are required to write to get their degrees, but aren't trained in writing. And so really wasn't instructional. Here are the fundamentals of writing, that if you're going to write a dissertation, which is essentially a book in higher education, this is what you need to do. So coming out of education and being trained in teaching and instruction and having taught writing classes at the university level, I really started my entree into formal writing as an author, providing instruction on writing.
Wow.
Or I should say good writing, effective writing.
Yeah, that's important right there. Guys, I know you can discern the wisdom that we are being exposed to right now. So I really want to encourage you, if you're able to grab something, write notes, even if it's digital notes, because this woman is a expertise in the area that we're about to discuss. So let me begin with my next question. Why is clarity so important in writing for an author?
Because everyone has a goal and a purpose for writing, and as authors, we there's something that motivates us to write. However, we don't always effectively communicate that to an audience. And so authors go wrong where they have all these wonderful thoughts and ideas or experiences. However, they're not able to deliver them in a way that a reader or the audience who is just being introduced to this person for the very first time needs to follow their train of thought.
Mm. So you just really opened the door to my next thought. What impedes clarity in writing?
For me, and I want to focus this on one of my areas of expertise, which is really my PhD focus in English was in personal narrative writing. And so it was all about the autobiography and memoirs and ways in which people talk about themselves. And so the biggest challenge in that genre and in general is people make assumptions about their reader's knowledge. And so when you, for example, are writing about your story, guess what? You lived it, you felt it, you experienced it, you know everybody you're writing about, you have relationships with them, you were there. Guess what? Your reader wasn't. They're again being introduced to you and your life for the first time. So there's a lot of assumptions that we make. There's a lot of information and details that we leave out that a person who didn't live it, who didn't experience, who didn't feel it, who wasn't visually there and doesn't see what you see when you're recalling that moment or that time or that encounter or that location, they weren't there. And so if you don't clearly describe the picture for them, the feeling, the emotion, the person, the relationship, it's easy for a reader to get lost and feel like, what in the world is going on? Even though in your mind, the author's mind, is very clear because, again, it's your experience.
Mm. Wow. Now I know that pain personally. So this question is real, real personal. How do you know what details to actually share? Because as a writer, we probably have so many perspectives we can share from, and it may birth a different way of expressing that experience. So how do you know what details to actually share?
That is an excellent question. And Victoria, when I work with authors and when I'm writing and coaching and editing, I always start from the end in mind. So I encourage authors to number one, be very clear about who your audience is, because here's the thing: everybody has a great story, but their story is not for everyone.
Mm.
And so often people write a book and I'll say, well, who's the audience for this book? Everybody, or all women, or all millennials, or all leaders. That's a great goal. Not that everyone cannot benefit, all leaders, all women, all whomever cannot benefit, but you need to be very clear about who you speak to.
Mm.
And so is it educated women? Is it single mothers? Is it women who are stuck? Is it leaders who are in a certain industry? Who are you trying to reach? Is it people, again, first generation, somebody or someone who started, is it a rags to riches story versus someone who was born into a privileged family and they're inheriting a business or a leadership position? These audiences have different experiences. And so when you're very clear about your audience going in, and then the goal, so it's back to two things to clarify, back to this theme of clarity. As an author, be clear about who ideally you speak to, not again that it can't benefit people outside of that focused audience, but be clear about who you benefit. And secondly, what do you want them to receive from this book? Do you want to inspire them? Do you want to primarily, again, a book can do a number of things. There can be inspiration, there can be education, but you need to know, what is my primary goal as an author? When I was writing my book, I knew I wanted to educate, inform, give skills. I wasn't there to entertain. I wasn't there to talk about my experience. I was there to give them concrete skills. So when you're clear about both your audience and your purpose, guess what that does, October? That helps you filter details, experiences, and it helps you have this laser focus of, if it's not contributing to my goal. Because here's the thing about writing: it's very intentional. Every word, every sentence, every paragraph, every chapter, every page needs to serve a purpose. And guess what that purpose is? To reach your audience and to accomplish your goal.
Mm.
And when you write with that type of intention, it's easier. Not that it's easy, because it is a skill that needs to be developed. And it doesn't happen in the first book, the first draft. I often say, even as an editor, in your first draft, if you think it belongs, just put it in. And then when we go back and look at it again, we can determine, is this as effective as we thought it was going to be? So writing is a process, and people make it an event. And that's the problem often, is they're not prepared for the process of writing versus, oh, I want to write a book. I'm going to sit down one time and it's perfect and I'm ready to publish it.
I almost took my earphones off and took off writing. Oh my goodness. Did y'all hear Dr. V? She said writing is a process, but we make it an event. You brought back to my memory when we first met. Now, when I first met Dr. V, guys, I hadn't even published my first book. I actually got connected to her through her son, Corey. And he was just sharing about how amazing his mom was and how he believed she could help me actually attain my dream of writing my book. So I'm calling her with my grandiose idea, and she listened so intently and patiently. And then when it was her turn to speak, she said, well, who's your audience? And I'm thinking, I just told you. And she's like, no, you didn't. And I thank God, honestly, for her, because she did not help me until I got clear on my audience. And what it forced me to do was actually take the time to do the work that is a part of the process of getting clear in writing. So, guys, what she's sharing is not just something you're like, oh, I heard that before. I had as well. Because again, when I came to the conversation, I thought I was giving her the audience and more. But the reality is I was not clear. I just had a broad concept of who and how I'd like to help people, but it was not definitive enough to turn into rather impactful content. So with that said, Vernetta, if I may ask you, and it may contain some things you've already shared, but for clarity purposes of our listener, how do you get clear and stay clear when you're developing content?
That's an excellent question. And it speaks to, even you sharing your story helps to illustrate that. People think clarity in writing starts when you start writing, but it doesn't. It starts when you start thinking about what you want to write, thinking about the book, so it's the thinking that is required before you even get to writing that helps you to be clear and stay clear. And so I think of it, or I like to present it in this way. Think of your job as a writer is you are delivering a certain promise to a reader. Mm. When you pick up this book, it's going to help you in these ways, inspire you in these ways, motivating you these ways, create this certain experience for you. And how do you communicate that? You communicate that. Titles are extremely important when it comes to books. Summaries, what's on the back cover is completely important. Why I encourage people to think about their audience is because how are people going to find out about your book? You're not Steven Spielberg. You're not Danielle Steele. So people aren't just running out to get your book, typically if you're a first-time author or newer author. And so that's why I encourage this exercise of go to the bookstore. Physically go to the bookstore or get on Amazon and search for a book. Where do you see your book in that space? These are the things you're doing before you have the idea, but before you're committing to writing. Oh, wow, I can see my book in inspirational women's section or in the reference. You have to know how your product is going to be distributed and sold before you start not just as an author. As an author, you have to be a little bit of a business person. And so it's those things that are in the thinking process that you think end goal backwards. Before I even start writing my book, if my book is done, how are people going to access it and how are they going to gain access to it? What section in a bookstore is it going to be? And that helps clarify. So then once, and then, and people approach things differently. So for me, because I was very in tune with my audience and very connected. So that's another part of the thinking process. How in tune are you with your audience? I knew I was teaching, I was in the environment of my audience. So I was very clear about their needs, about how I could help them. And so I didn't have to do a lot of research per se, because I was engaging with my audience every week. And so if you are an author that is already connected with your audience, that's some of your kind of pre-writing work. Are you hearing about what these women are complaining about or wanting, or these leaders, or again, whoever your audience is? Because you may not be crystal clear starting, and that's okay. You may just start with leaders and women. However, as you're starting this reflective process, it is helping you to clarify within the segment of women or leaders, or people in general, who am I here to reach? And so as you're doing that work and you have that intention, again, the draft doesn't have to be perfect. And that's where people put too much pressure on themselves. The draft just has to be complete and done with your goal as an author to reach your audience and accomplish your person. Accomplish your purpose. Then when you come back to revise it, now you're assessing how effectively you did that. We have this saying in writing that writing, it can always be better, but it's a place, you have to find a stopping point where it's good enough. I tell people like this. I go back and look at everything, and I go back and look at emails and text messages. Like, I could have communicated that clear. I could have used a different word. I'm that crazy person. I'll go resend a text. Oh, I'm so sorry about the typo, because I'm going back and re-looking at my writing and thinking that could have been expressed clearer, or I made this mistake. And so it's something that I practice as an author. This is not something I practice just when I'm ready to write a book. I practice it every time I write, every time I send an email, every time I send a text. I refuse to write in text message because I'm an author. And for my audience, I can't get comfortable because my audience is educated and they expect me, who has a PhD in English, to be educated. So even though I will say in conversation, it be hot outside today. But I know better. I know that subject verb, just not conjugating my subject and verbs properly. So, but I'm not going to write in a text, it be hot outside today. I'm going to say it is hot outside today. So when people want to be authors, I call it the craft. They have to practice the craft of writing every time they write. You have to think about purpose and intention and clarity every time you send that email, every time you send that text. And then it becomes who you are and what an extension of who you are. And then it becomes more natural. So that's why I say it's a process, Octoria. If this is the person's first time, or they just wrote a book and they didn't have any of these things, it can be overwhelming. I look back at my PhD that I earned in 2007, and I'm like, they gave me a PhD writing like that? Because guess what? I've grown, I've matured, I've become more effective because I'm constantly practicing my craft. So that's why often people need the guidance of someone like you, someone like me, who I kind of want to overwhelm people, because I want them to know it's not as easy as you think it's going to be. And if you're going to be effective, if you want a quality book, now there's plenty of products out there that aren't quality books. And they're bestsellers too, because they have great marketing teams and they have great PR people. But you pick up the book, it lacks clarity. It's trash. And then there are gems of book that don't have the quality. So that's where, as an author, you have to be comfortable and know the type of product that you want. And if it's just about sales and you don't want a quality book and you don't want to be clear, that's your right as an author. And so that's why I give kudos to you, because there's people that I work with often who come to me and they think they're done. And I have to let them know, no, you're just beginning. And there are people that come and they don't want to do the work. They're like, I put enough effort in, I'm ready to meet my deadline. I'm not the person for them. Again, that's back to me knowing my audience, because I'm not going to put my stamp of approval as a professional on something that I know is not of quality. However, for people who want to do the work, who want a certain quality, whose story I believe in, and I believe the world can benefit and their audience can benefit from it, then let's do the work together. Let me help you. Let me equip you. Let me help you think stronger and clearer. And again, back to you, I know I'm answering your question in a long roundabout way because I'm trying to make a complex topic simple, but clarity is throughout the process of writing, from the thinking to the first draft to the revision to the end point, now the distribution, the selling of it. You're constantly trying to be clear, and you'll finish your book and then you'll say, man, that chapter could have been clearer, or the book. And that's okay, because guess what, you write a new book and it'll be stronger and it'll be better and it'll be clearer.
Guys, I don't know if you're feeling like how I'm feeling right now. I just couldn't do anything but be quiet and listen. That was so powerful. A huge thing I feel that I walked away in all that what you just shared was that clarity is a process. It is a process, guys. Give yourself the permission to get clear, but you can't get clear if you're not taking the action to begin, do the work, collaborate with others. You'll get clearer as you take more action in your process as an author. Wow. Now, Vernetta, if I may, excuse me, Dr. Vernetta, if I may, you hit something that I believe many authors who are either on this journey or already published struggle with really tapping into. You said, how in tune are you with your audience? And if I could just develop that question a little bit more in saying, what does that really mean? Because as a publisher, I often have that same question that I ask authors. And they believe they know because they assume the authors, I mean, not the authors, but the readers need what they want to share. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
hear a whole lot about them saying why they know or understand or are confident the readers need what they want to share. So can you elaborate just a little bit more on how do you really get in tune with your audience?
That's excellent. That's where you have to, and that's why I said there's a business side to writing as well. That's where you have to understand a little bit about market research and a little bit about, and it's not even that deep. Let's say I want to reach, well, let's start here, Octoria. The first question is, are you surrounded by anybody in your audience?
Mm,
So if you say, I want to write a book for leaders who are, I don't know, in a certain position managing people, do you actually talk to any of those people? Are you friends with any of them? Do you spend time with any of those people? If you're a mother or a what do they call, an empty nester, you're a new empty nester and you want to write a book to help women transition from, being devoted to their children to now having an empty nester. Again, are any of your friends empty nesters, or are
mm.
you the only one? Do you associate only with still people that are stay-at-home moms who haven't been through that experience? So that's the first point of contact, is who is in your circle. And are you connected to them? Or do you just assume, because this is what will happen too. We will have been somewhere, we've overcome that place, but we're still trying to reach that audience. So for example, who Vernetta was 20 years ago as a first generation college student who is first starting her college journey, or really her Ph.D. journey, is very different from the Vernetta that has a Ph.D. for 11 years.
Mm-hmm.
I came from it, but I still am not in tune today necessarily with that audience. The only way I'm connected to them is because I'm constantly teaching them. So even when I first wrote my book, I was starting at a level that was above them because my educational experience had exceeded them. So I had to bring it back down and say, oh my goodness, like I was the audience 20 years ago, but I'm not today. So I have to make a decision. Who am I surrounded by? Either I have to get back connected with my audience and start being in those circles again, or I need to write a different book for a different, maybe now my book needs to be about those who are 5-10 years removed from that. And now they're starting their career journeys and I can help them through that process. So I think those are the ways that you think about how, first of all, how connected am I currently to my audience? Are they a part of my weekly interactions? Don't even say daily, but weekly interactions. Am I in their communities, their circles, their conversations? If I'm not, then I'm probably not in tune to them, or as tuned as I think I am. And this goes in all spheres, Octoria. This goes to, and that's why you really, it can help authors to follow speakers. How do speakers stay relevant? If you're writing a motivational, inspirational book, follow some effective, well-known motivational speakers and see how they stay relevant to their audience. I was working with a pastor recently, and he was talking about, how he wants to reach a certain inner city community, but he lives in the suburbs. He comes from, again, years ago. But guess what? The inner city is different. Like the drug of choice is now fentanyl. People aren't really dealing with crack and coke. It's a different inner city experience now. And so you were once there, but if you're not still connected to that community, maybe now you can reach those who are doing the work to get into the community, but you're not directly connected to them anymore because you're thinking I can go in here and do certain things, and they're looking at you like we're driving Teslas and we're doing fraud. We're not even on the corners anymore. That's not what drug dealing looks like in 2020, in this day and age is what I'm saying. And so again, it's back to that thinking and that reflection and that first identification of how connected do I even talk to who I say I want to reach.
Wow. Guys, we are going to have to get Dr. Vernetta back on this podcast because I am like blown away, and I know you all are as well. You have dropped so many gems, and I have a feeling you've only scraped the surface on this really huge topic. So, with that said, as we begin to wrap it up, and again, we're going to try to work to get Vernetta back. Is there any way that our listeners can grow with you and get more about this topic in the intern period?
Sure. Yeah. So I did found a company called Cultivate the Writer. So people can visit my website or follow us on social media. The website is www.cultivatethewriter.com. Personally, I offer writing coaching sessions so we can work around issues of clarity, book conceptualization, all of those types of things. I do editing services as well. So all of that information is on our website. Now, if you go to the website is academic focused because that's where I come out of. A lot of the non-academic work that I do is my heart passion, and I often do it by referral only. And so, but because, Octoria, we have such a great relationship and partnership, I know people that are connected to you are my type of people. And so they have a referral through you as long as I have space and time available. But right now, I don't promote the things that I do for non-academic clients because I just personally don't have the time. Now, that's something that I'll be going to once I kind of solidify some things that I'm doing in academia. The other thing is I also have a book. Again, it's academic focused, but it talks about the writing process. And so for those of you who want to have some type of introduction to what the stages of the writing process look like, that book is available on Amazon and in a Kindle format. And it's called I'm Not a Writer, I'm Just in Graduate School, A Guide to Writing Clearly, Concisely, and Coherently. And this podcast is just urging me to do something that I said I was going to do, which is to make a non-academic version of that book, because it really is the same process, the same things. It's just using different type of examples. And so, again, it may not be the most effective guide because the audience, again, is for people getting masters and PhDs and have to do a certain style of writing. And so the examples aren't going to be relevant, but the process, the steps are going to be relevant. So, and I'm trying to think of some other resources beyond my book that could help writing process. A lot of the books that I know are about style. I don't think anybody in the commercial space really writes on process. So I think I need to just go ahead and make that a goal to get that book done. But those are the ways that people can stay connected.
Can y'all say amen for Dr. Vernetta writing that book and just getting it done? Amen. Wow, wow, wow. Guys, as we wrap up this powerful, powerful conversation on how to master clarity in writing, I'm going to go ahead and say part one. I want to leave you with this before turning it back over to Dr. Vernetta to close out. A big gem for me was that writing is a process, so stop trying to make it an event. Woo! Dr. Vernetta, would you like to say anything else in closing?
Yes, I would just like to reiterate something you said earlier, which is being patient with yourself and giving yourself grace. You don't know what you don't know. Again, I tell people that I liked writing and again, won an essay contest when I was an elementary school student. But guess what? I still had to go get educated. Mm-hmm. I still had to go get 3 degrees and spend 12 years in school to know what I know today. And so be patient with yourself as you develop, and don't try to put out the perfect product. Your writing will evolve. Be proud of the product. Know that you put in the effort and the energy. Don't when you're shortcutting yourself versus you gave your effort and it's just you're evolving. And so be gracious, be kind, be patient with yourself. Just be committed to growing. And that's why I called the development part of what we do, cultivate the writer. So the last piece of advice I will leave with you is this. There is a writer in every single one of you. Guess what? That writer just needs to be cultivated. So people aren't born good writers. I was born with a passion and a liking towards writing, but I wasn't born. I still had to learn. And so writing is a skill that you can develop. You just need the right resources, the right information, the right support, the right accountability to cultivate that writer that is within you. And so I know that's a goal of Octoria's podcast and Dream Big Publishing, is to really cultivate that writer that's within you so that you can thrive and produce these wonderful publications that will reach the audiences and be the blessing that you want them to be.
Woo, woo, woo. There you have it, guys. Dr. Vernetta has provided you with not only resources, she shared tools and tips. So let's implement, let's execute, and let's prosper together, authors. Until we connect again. Talk to you soon.